Good afternoon. I'm MJ from Linus Publications. And this afternoon, we're going to look at Palestine. I had noted last week that I didn't think, this was going to, the peace deal that Trump had worked through with the Arab nations and with Israel was going to work long term. And it's not necessarily because of the Palestinians. What I'm seeing is that there are issues in the Israel chart, and we'll do the Israel chart at some other point. So today I want to do the Palestine chart for the Palestinians. Now I do want to make note that there was actually a peace plan that Biden had put into place, and that started with a ceasefire, which when he left office, the ceasefire was in place. And then there were other parts of the plan that were defined. And in effect, what happened? Well, Israel broke the ceasefire. So there was a peace plan before. And Israel didn't adhere to it. Are we at that same point? Yes, we're at that same point again. We have a peace deal, and people have agreed to it. But let's see if Israel is going to keep their word. And no, when we had the peace deal before, hostages were also being released. So I just wanted to sort of bring that up. Some people are forgetting that this has already happened before. So let's take a look at what the chart shows for Palestine. And we do have some solar arc directions, some progressions in here, along with the transits. Most of this is the transits. And I didn't do all the angles because really there were just way too many of them. So there is a lot going on. Now I've done it up to I believe it's April of next year, because there's a lot of pieces here that are going along. So let's start. So first off, we've got Uranus that is conjuncting the pot of fortune, and that's on 1025, which is coming up. But unfortunately, it's retrograde. What does that mean? Well, let's take a look at Uranus conjuncting the pot of fortune. That would mean progress, just so much electric type of activity going on, innovation. But when it's retrograde, what does it mean? It means it's slowed down. We still have progress, but it's slow. So, and there's also a questioning on the systems. What needs to be changed? It's a delay of having the freedom. So retrograde means delay, not stopping completely, but delayed. So where Uranus would have been sort of electric energy, this is sort of like tepid, sort of going along. It's still good, but not as good as if it was direct. And at some point, it will go direct. Next thing we have is on 11/16/2025, and this is the Wounded Warrior in conjunct the Midheaven. And this is retrograde. Now, when we have the Midheaven, for a country or state, that is indicating their status pretty much in the world. And if there's a leader to that, it also indicates that leader. In this case, having the Wounded Warrior angling, doing that in conjunct, that means that literally the forces that will be in power, and this is an in conjunct, are not recognizing the wounds that the people, the country has suffered. So this is sort of a big one, in that the wounds are not going to let this governing structure actually work well. Because somehow the wounds of the people have to be recognized and somehow attended to. So the leadership is not going to be trusted because they're not seeing this. Past decisions are likely to be resurfacing. So again, it's like those wounds are ignored. And because of this, some of these institutions will face destabilization. Now, I do want to bring up that a lot of the children involved here, they're going to grow up at some point, which means that the wounds need to somehow be attended to, because otherwise they will grow up to be what? Probably terrorists, okay? Because of what was done to them when they were small. Now, the next thing we have is on 12/7, we have Venus conjuncting the 12th house. Now, this is a solar arc direction. Now, Venus moving into the 12th house typically means that there'll be a lot of activity going on under the surface, which is actually what you would expect when someone is trying, when people are trying to shore up a country and sort of get governorship, systems working. But one thing that this will also bring up is possibly because all of the rebuilding that might be done, a lot of stuff might be resurfaced. Things that had been hidden, maybe denied. So this is going to come up to the surface. Now, next thing we have on 12/15 is we have Jupiter opposing Neptune. Sorry. And Jupiter is what? Expansive, sort of gaseous. Neptune is what? Your illusions, your vision. So this means the vision that likely the governing council has or the people, it's not practical. In effect, overreach, there's contradictions, but there's too much optimism. They're not there yet. There's too much conflict, between what should be done. So, in effect, this is just thinking too big, too much. Next thing we have done, and this is in January, this is a nice one. This is a transit. It's on 114 and Saturn trining Pluto. This is a really good angle to have. Saturn is what? The structure. Okay, it's a structure of a government. And what's Pluto? The foundation. So in effect, it seems at this point that we have a stabilization going on. So whatever has been put in place seems like it's working, seems like it's addressing the things that need to be done, the structural reforms, and consolidating power. So somehow they're bringing, the power structures together and the structures that will be used for the institutions that need to be developed. So all of this seems to be sort of coming along. Problem is that only about 3 days later, on 117, we have Pluto squaring the midheaven. Midheaven, again, would be if you have a person in charge or the council in charge. What Pluto does is it wants to, in effect, topple things when it's in square type of angle. So Pluto wants to destroy. So this means that whatever leadership there is, something is not working. So it might be a leadership crisis, might be that it's just getting rid of outdated structures. And so maybe the leadership council is okay, but the outdated structures are not okay and they have to create new ones. But there's something here, in effect, that's saying, oops, we have to get rid of things. Next thing we have on 120 is Jupiter is in conjunct Fate. And in this case, and this is retrograde. So a lot of this is going on behind the curtains. It's a realization that you're looking at what the country is meant to do or meant to grow into or meant to move on what path, and sort of stepping back and saying, 1 minute, are we doing that? So in this case, this is an inconjunct. It's saying we can't get there from here. So whatever they're planning, whoever is guiding this, can't get there. So this, in effect, is saying what? Complications are coming up. Maybe the frameworks that are being put together are being questioned. But it is saying that something is not correct with the path. It has to be fixed. And this is coming within the same week of, in effect, having issues with the leadership, having too much optimism about what's going on. So it's not unusual to see all this together and to sort of, have so many things happening when all of a sudden you realize it's not going well. And the fact that it may not be going well at this point is not saying things are bad. Because when you're trying to build up structures, build up a government, of course things are not going to go to plan. So next thing we have is that we have Venus trying Saturn. And this is a solar angle. And this is actually great. Venus is, think of it as a social networks. It's a community trying Saturn. So it means that they're sort of building their structures. What are the type of structures? Well, it could be as simple as building things like restaurants, grocery stores, little medical centers, cafes. So it's the social things. They're building the community. So this is a really nice piece that's coming in here. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but it's showing that some type of governance is working. So things are it's composed, it's credible. And there's some stabilization when it comes to the economy. Maybe people can get things. Places, are coming up that can sell. So it's a definite shift into something that seems like it's working, and that's in February. Next thing we have is Jupiter is opposing Venus, and this is in the solar angle. Now, in this case, Jupiter expansion, Venus on, in effect, the things you're putting together. So too much. So the ambitions that either the people have or the governing council is just too much. It's overreach. So it's indulgent. It's bloated. So they're putting together a narrative on how well they can do without actually taking in a lot of ethical concerns. So the expansion they're doing lacks being able to be sustained over the long period. And it could be they're just trying to do things too fast. Now, diplomatic channels that are established might be too lucrative for the people involved, which means they're questionable. So at this point, we might have little threads of corruption coming through. Economic bubble and overreach. Now, at about this time, Saturn is going to be moving into the 9th house, which is actually good. Saturn is a stabilizing influence. It is focused. Most times I say, yes, it's restraining, but in some cases, this restraint is good. It's moving into the house of what? The legal system, justice, education, ideology. All of these things are things that can use Saturn's focus on getting things right, getting a structure in place. So Saturn moving into this house it's a good thing. What's not so good is a few days later, we have Neptune following it. Neptune is what? Foggy. So think of it, Saturn wants to build a legal system. Neptune's going to come along and say, well, I don't know. Do we really need one? Okay, let's think about it for a while. Neptune is very diffuse, very foggy. So in this case, a lot of ambition, but there's very little grounding to be able to do that. It could be that there's a credibility crisis because of Neptune. So this could cause problems with, in effect, over imagining things that just aren't there. Next thing we have, and that's Saturn is on 222 when it goes into the 9th house, and it's going to be there for about 2.5 years. Neptune goes in at around 227, and it's going to be there for a lot longer. Next thing we have on 3.5 is Jupiter squaring Mars, and this is retrograde. Now, some of this is going to take place behind the curtains, but whenever you see a square or something to Mars, and in this case, it's what? Jupiter, expansiveness. So this is sort of like, okay, we've got ambitions here that we can't action on. So the drive that to expand here is not going to be sustainable. Past ambitions, because this is a retrograde, ambitions or unresolved conflicts might come back into play, which is not a good thing, because when you hear something like that, you might think Hamas is coming back, something that was not really resolved. Could be other things that are coming back. Now, this also indicates that your ambition just collides with your ability to implement it. Next thing we have, and this is on 4-3, and this is one of the ones that I'm sort of looking at and saying, okay, this could be a major, little event coming up. We've got Uranus squaring Pluto, and this is in the solar angle chart. So what is this saying? A sudden shock to the system. Uranus is think of as electricity. Pluto is the foundation. So we've got deep-rooted structures, possibly of dominance, which is the Pluto, and Uranus wants to uproot that. It wants to, since it's a square. So this could mean that the old order that is dominant, or the order that's in there, is now being challenged by a new order. So this is literally a flashpoint that's coming up. But that's in about what? 5 months, 6 months. So this is actually, if they're getting to that point, and if they can sort of see this coming and resolve it, that would be good. The next thing we see is on 5-9, and that's next year, and this is Mars opposing Jupiter. And this is in the progression. Now, Mars is what? Action. Jupiter is expansion, opportunities. Opposition is conflict. So this looks like there's actually action against expanding. So the thing that comes to mind is, I know Trump and Netanyahu at one point had, talked about this real estate being developed along the Gaza Strip on the waterfront. I immediately thought of that, saying, is that what is destined? Is that something that maybe people wouldn't like? Is that something that the people want? So, not to say that that is what it's going to be, but there's something that, in effect, something that's being created, or the want to act, is in effect, it's against this expansion. So you have action and expansion, but they're not on the same side. So it's difficult to get them together, because it typically means that you've got conflicts of opinion on what to do. Now, this could also be on belief systems, because Jupiter also is, relates to faith-based idealism. So it could be that there's action against that. So maybe there's something to do with the faith that's being practiced there. Now, all in all, this is actually quite promising for Palestine. I am seeing some little blips. I'm seeing this thing right around 4-3 Uranus square Pluto. I'm seeing some other ones with some sort of things as to where they're heading. I'm seeing some things, with the council, do they really know? But nothing that would not be expected with where this country or where this state is at this time. We have a state that is literally demolished, that needs to be rebuilt. They're going to be someone is putting together a council to steer the growth. The growth hasn't been decided. The council hasn't really been firmly decided. So all of these things are still in play. They have to feed and care for all these people. They have to get some type of commerce up, and some aid into the country. They have to deal with rebuilding the country and how it's going to be rebuilt. And they have to deal with how the country is going to govern itself. So there are a lot of pieces here, and you can see where some of these are coming together in the flow I just provided. This is an astrological flow. It's not mine. It's what the charts are telling me is going to happen. And I can see at some point that maybe, there might be some, move against the council or the leadership. And then again, when it's sort of the old versus the new. But all in all, it's actually looking not bad. Okay, we'll come back and see maybe in January whether things have changed and how it's progressing, and see how it compares to what we said. Now, I hope you had a great day. Have a great day, and thank you for watching. Bye now.